Hello and welcome to the Public Healthpreneur Podcast. I am so excited to have this conversation with you, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm great, doing well. Yes. Can't complain on this Friday.
Coming back from vacation. I think you've been
Yes.
gone for about 10 days. Was it 10 days?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just about. Yeah.
Yeah. I bet you were doing fine until you looked at that email, all of those emails that you need to catch up on, I'm sure.
Yes, there's definitely a lot, but luckily I had some great support from my team during it. So
Good.
it helped alleviate some things. But as always, when you come back and you're like, okay, yeah, this vacation is over. This is a
Yeah, it's
reality.
over for this is why I left in the first place.
Yes.
No. Great. Well, I'm glad you're rested. I am excited to talk to you about the book. Before we get into it too deeply, for those that just may have kind of bounced around the book or haven't quite got to your chapter yet, go ahead and introduce yourself and share just a little bit about your business, what you all do, how you serve, etc.
Yeah, of course. So it's great to connect with you all virtually, but I'm Vanessa Da Costa, and I'm the founder, CEO, and principal consultant of Chilombo Consulting. And in short, we're a data consulting firm that helps organizations make sense of their data. So I work with a team of contractors, qualitative and quantitative consultants, and we work in the areas of data skills training and coaching, data collection, analysis, visualization, and evaluation. So at any point, equity-centered organizations we primarily work with need support with a specific project, a specific program, or for us to jump in and help out with a training, we're here to support. And we work primarily with public health, healthcare, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility related projects and organizations.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And could you share a little bit about your educational background, some of the titles and positions that you have that you've worked in, and your favorite public health position?
Ah, great question. And I know what I'll say right away. So I have a Master's of Public Health in Global Epidemiology from Emory, Rollins School of Public Health. And I also have a Bachelor of Science degree in Psychology and minor in African Studies from
Wow.
the University of North Carolina. So any Tar Heels watching, go Tar Heels. So that's primarily my educational background. And so to follow up on your other question, I've had a couple of different roles. So I'll kind of start with post-undergrad, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. So I was a community health volunteer, community health specialist working in Rwanda. I've also worked as a research interviewer, graduate teaching assistant, graduate research assistant, all in the global health research data related space. And also was a global epidemiology fellow, data analyst. And the last job I had before I transitioned to full-time consulting was as a data analysis advisor at the US Agency for International Development within their Global Health Bureau, their Office of HIV/AIDS. And I would say it's hard to choose kind of, I would say I have a favorite job based on kind of like leadership, team environment, and like really developing my skill set, which is that job at USAID. I actually acknowledge my former supervisor in my acknowledgments because she played just such an instrumental role in my growth and skill development. But I would say that, the work that I did abroad in Rwanda, I was able to go back at 3 different time points, once during USAID, or I was there for Peace Corps experience, as well as my summer graduate research while there. So I think kind of all of the mixed experiences that brought me back to doing global health work in Rwanda kind of also will roll them up into like an experience that really was enjoyable for me and helped really define kind of like my purpose, role, and interest in public health.
I love that. And you talk about global health being your specialty. And I did not know until I read your chapter in the book, like, oh, she's really been around the world. Like, your public health experiences have literally taken you around the world. So tell us about that. So where all have you traveled and what were you doing as it relates to public health in those different areas around the world?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start giving a bit of background. So I'm a first generation American. Technically not because I wasn't born here, but my family, my parents immigrated from the African continent to England to where I was born, and then my family immigrated to the States. So I always kind of said like my community is really the global community based on like the different influences I had. So part of, again, related to like my almost medical background and healthcare background stems from like my dad and his experiences as he's a physician and works in the global health space as well, and vaccine development and all of that. So I just became really interested in like global health and like traveling, but like for the purpose of impact, not just for vacation, which is great as well too, right? But like to integrate that into the work that I'm doing. And so my first kind of experience, I talk a bit briefly in the book, is when I worked, or I wouldn't say worked, but I did a community service trip to Costa Rica. And that was my first experience abroad in a not just vacation setting, although I will share that that was part of the experience as well, but in a actual service component, working at a health clinic, supporting children with health education initiatives and campaigns. From there, kind of fast forward to about a year after graduation, I did work within the domestic setting in North Carolina, but then I transitioned to Rwanda, which I mentioned again, where I served in the Peace Corps. And then after grad school, I went back to Atlanta, as mentioned before, Emory. The summer in between year 1 and 2, I went back to Rwanda for my graduate school research, but this time I was based in the capital, Kigali, instead of in a rural community as I was before. And then after graduation, I got a fellowship in South Africa at CDC South Africa, working with their team there on HIV programming and their data management and analytics needs. So have lived in both South Africa and Rwanda for global health experiences, but have also, I have spent some time in other countries supporting both virtually in the global health space, but have also traveled to Ethiopia for work, Thailand for more of conducting trainings, but work as well. So that's kind of a bit of my global health.
Oh, wow. I love it. If you are in global health or considering it, I mean, this is an inspiration, right? I always feel like it's too late for me. I got the kids and I got this and I got that. But that sounds like a dream that you were able to get. Because the thing that happens, and I love that you talked about, oh, Costa Rica, yeah, it was for vacation, but it was business also. Because we actually touched on that in my interview with Jamidra, who we have coined the pleasure expert, because she talked about in the book how, you know, most of her trips now are business and pleasure. And I love that you touched on that as well. And I think that's a common thread when it comes to consulting, is that's like going to be the future of your life most of the time when you go on business trips, except for when you do a trip like you just did. There was something I wanted, oh, you mentioned, so pre-med is one of those themes that not only is mentioned in the book, because I was initially pre-med as well. I had goals and aspirations of being a physician, medical examiner specifically. And you talked about it as well. I know Giovanni, I think, wanted to be a dentist, but even in just talking to our colleagues, so many of us wanted to be physicians and ended up in public health. And I was going to ask you, like, what was your influence? And you just talked about your father. So tell me again, you said he works with vaccinations. Tell me exactly the type of you know, care he provides as a physician, but then also talk about how that influenced your entry into public health a little bit.
Yeah, so my dad was a practicing physician most of my childhood, but at the point that so I moved around to a couple different states growing up, but at the point that I started high school, he actually transitioned into the pharmaceutical industry. So he was practicing physician, just general internal medicine on the side, you know. So actually my dad is the first consultant, I would say, in the family. He always said, I wish I started it as early as you do, but he does it on the side in addition to his, you know, main role. But he transitioned into pharmaceuticals. So kind of healthcare, you know, that was the area that I was most exposed to, I would say, growing up. And so I wanted to be a pediatrician. I babysat a lot growing up, loved kids. And I kind of, you know, transitioned to the work I was doing with the children-focused health clinic in Costa Rica and like that student organization. So I was exposed to, you know, kind of like strong public health principles, vaccines are important, all of these things like at a
Yes.
very young age. And so
I love
I
it.
just naturally, like without any pressure, wanted to go into that area. So, in high school, I started volunteering. I volunteered at like the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I, started to engage in those types of areas. And as I was going to college, I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. But college opened up a whole other world of
No,
health for me.
yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of just like many of the student organizations were very focused on public health initiatives, right?
Mhm.
Like in beyond just like direct clinical healthcare. And so between that and some of the courses, and I talk a bit more about that in detail in the book that I was able to take, I really started to understand what public health was and what global health was.
What
So even
global
before
health
the
is.
more
Yeah.
detailed and specific courses I had in grad school, that was like the foundational knowledge that I was able to gain. And so, yeah, I think between that and also just quite frankly, like some of the coursework that I had to take in pre-med, I was like, I don't know what this is leading me towards, but I was enjoying the public health courses. And I knew the end goal of, becoming a physician, but I really liked the more community engagement, getting to do, especially now as a consultant, like, although I'm data focused, I do so many different things within that and working with different organizations as well. So that is really what kind of like led me to
I
that
love
path.
that. I
So
love that.
honestly, student organizations and being exposed to public health courses at an undergraduate level. And UNC is a huge, public health school. So even though didn't go there for grad school, there was a lot that I was able to be exposed to from my time there. So
I
yeah.
love that. We're going to talk more about the exposure and kind of the pivotal moments for you in transitioning. Thanks,
Mhm.
Dad, for offering that representation and kind of sparking that interest. But I want to
Mhm.
just touch on one other thing as it relates to your travels before I transition. You brought up a term in the book I have never heard of before, and it's called voluntourism. And you spoke about the concerns you have and how it just made you aware of issues related to voluntourism. Tell the listeners and viewers, what does that mean, and what are those concerns that you have about it that you brought up in the book
Yeah, of
or
course.
alluded to? Because you did
Yeah,
bring it up.
yeah. Alluded
You
to, didn't
alluded
go
to
into
it.
so
Yeah.
much detail,
Yeah.
but again, so volunteerism is really, thinking of the combination of the two words. So you're going somewhere to volunteer to give back to a specific community, but there's also a tourism component involved, right? Like you may be paying for the trip, you may be providing certain or getting certain experiences that are more tourism based. But ultimately, the trip is partially catered to you as a volunteer, right? Finding how you can specifically support a community and fit into something, around your schedule, around your spring break, right? Around your maybe just 5 working days or half days if, hey, you're taking a trip later in the day that you're doing it. So the concerns really, when you think about it, it's somewhat selective and it's somewhat short-term and temporary. And there are similar concerns within consulting, right? You may be supporting something short-term, long-term. But as with kind of, and I could have a whole other interview about this, the power dynamics when it comes to, working abroad, global health, going to communities that you haven't built, long-term trust, engagement, and
Yeah.
we were supporting them virtually, right? Financially through donations and helping with research and things of that nature. But really, you're coming in for a short term, providing a service where you do question, and a lot of times you see, the literature and everything happening in international development where what is like, the benefit of this short-term impact, right? Is it just benefiting me? I'm getting experience. I'm getting to see
Yeah.
this community, or in those 5 days, are the initiatives that I'm supporting or I'm implementing, are those truly valuable? So I think, there's a lot of levels to it. And I think, now, especially with a lot of the changes I'm seeing in international development, organizations are trying to be more intentional to make sure that it is just as beneficial to the communities that you're supporting as it may be to you as a volunteer or somebody who is going into a community that you're not a part of, you haven't built as much engagement with and all of that. But I definitely always, in the setting of global health, always like to mention that not all engagements are the best engagements.
Yeah.
And there's just different levels and kind of, privileges that we need to check as we are doing this type of work and supporting these communities. And I think part of kind of why, alluding to Rwanda, my experience started in a volunteer program, right? Also some areas of concern that people have around Peace Corps, which I definitely understand and agree with to a certain extent. So for me, it was also very important to build long-term relationships, right? To continue my work there. Although I don't primarily work on global health projects, I know that I'll always have those connections and always, aim to work in that environment. So I think it's very important that anyone interested in global health or volunteering abroad is aware of this. They seek out organizations that, have this a focus in mind to have equitable engagements, that are aware of their privilege, and so that they can provide more impact than harm when they're supporting.
Vanessa, the entrepreneur in me, because I have so many friends, nurses and healthcare colleagues and social workers that go on mission trips.
Yes.
The entrepreneur in me is saying, Vanessa, create training around this topic. Because we could get into I have goosebumps, literally have goosebumps, because and I can't digress from the interview, so I'll say this and we'll move on. A lot of what you talked about, we see that happening here, right? Health departments, they get funding. We go into
in all contexts,
the program. We do what we think is best for them. Like you said, it's not necessarily the best way to engage. It's not valuable for the community and for the individuals that live in that community. And then we pull out, and that's that. I never thought about it from a global health perspective until you talked about volunteerism and you further explained it here. And as you're thinking about it, I'm thinking about my well-intentioned doctor friends and nursing friends and social worker friends that go on annual mission trips that ultimately go with the best of intentions to do really good work. But it's just as you described. Are we really checking our privileges? And are we really incorporating, the best type of service for those individuals and communities? I want to talk about this some more offline, because it's something that I never even thought about it until you brought it up. So thank you so much for bringing it up in the book and further providing the explanation for myself and the listeners as well. All right, let's get back. Okay, Quisha, bring it down. Let's get back into the conversation. So I want to know, when did you realize, even though you said your dad was the first public health consultant, when did you realize that public health entrepreneurship was a realistic option for you?
So realistic is not from when I first jumped into the world of entrepreneurship. I'm always trying to see if there is a defining moment, and was shortly before I quit my job is when I'm like, okay, I probably can do this. And I think it just came with, at the point where I could no longer fully do my full-time job and run my business without something giving. And so August of 2023 when I quit my job, but that year previously, just a lot had been coming up with potential travels. I was on, the schedule to be traveling 2 places later in that year. And it was a long contract prep period, but we were about to sign a contract for a year-long project that, although I'm working with others on, the engagement is relatively high. And, I knew that I needed to be present. And so when I previously in that same year, I had traveled to both Ethiopia and Thailand for work, and it was very challenging. Even though I didn't have full-time business work and I had some support with things, time zones, right? Getting on calls, all of that. And so I think that's when I realized this is viable, because I have no desire to be working 8 hours a week and having 2 full-time jobs. And this is now, I'm getting enough work where I need time for not just the client work, but to really be able to build out the business, which was what I was really able to focus on. Just a lot of administrative, automated process things were the priority, kind of as soon as I left, things that I've been putting on the back burner, I'm just getting by, but the foundation was a bit rocky. So I would say, honestly, that was the point. And, as I briefly mentioned in the book, all during this time, it wasn't just within my own thoughts, but where resources were a huge component. And, me and one of my lead consultants, Brittany, we had really been going through your materials, making sure we're, creating stronger proposals and resources and documents for all the part of the process of getting clients. And so, that kind of being like, wow, I'm really focused on not just trying to get a client here and there, but like build a whole organization around this. That's kind of when I was like, this is possible. And of course, you have all the logistic, financial, lifestyle things that you have to consider. So, having those conversations as well, and getting advice from family and friends and stuff, but really just
family and friends who supported you. I when I did my interview, I talked about, I have a relative, and just in case they watch, I'm not gonna say who they are. I have a relative that specifically was like, what are you doing? We as in Black people, we don't leave 6-figure jobs. We don't do that. What are you doing? And I remember saying, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to bet on myself. I can always go back if it, and I was told, hey, if it don't work, we love to have you come back. But I remember that was the only, if I can use the word, naysayer. And like you, I had gotten to the point where I had enough projects in my business to where I'm like, oh, I'm working 2 full-time jobs. Something has to give here, or I'm going to keep paying it out by hiring subcontractors. So everyone else, mom, dad, sisters, husband, were on board. So who was your backbone, kind of your support saying, do this, it's time. It's time for you to do it.
Yeah. So I would say, so everyone in my family, my mom, dad, sisters, now fiance, are very supportive, but I would say of all of them, like the biggest push came from my fiance, because he actually was like telling me to leave my job for a while. And I was like, I can't, like a million reasons, which I had a lot of reasons, right? But, all the conversations that we had around this, he's just like, you are ready to, like, I believe in your business. And, something that he tells me every week, even though, I haven't reached the goal. I think you're always trying to reach a new goal, but like, I'm still growing, I left my job 7 months ago now. There's still certain things that I'm on track to meet for this year, but really hoping to get in my first year, right? But really just believing in the business. So he actually, like 2 days before I decided to put in, I gave a 3 weeks notice. I was like, I need time. He was like, why don't you just do it tomorrow? Like, kind of joking. And I was like, And then the next day, same day, there was a call about like back to work, back in office. Mind you, I live about an hour from the office. I'm like commuting, DMV style.
God, I can't even imagine.
Oh, I don't have time for this. And so I already had a meeting with my boss at the time, and I just did it. And then I called him and I was like, so I think, because he's at work, sent him a text. I was like, yeah, I did it. What? Yeah. So that was like kind of the biggest push. I would not have done it as early because I was planning to do it in this year of 2020. And I would say my dad as well. As I mentioned to you, he does consulting on the side under his own LLC, but works a full-time job. And for a period of time, he left the job he had at the time to fully commit to consulting. And he always says, and he's a risk taker with jobs, he's worked at like most of the top pharmaceutical companies that are out there. And so he's always like, if I started this earlier, maybe it's all I would be doing. Like, you should just do it. Like, you're young, you have nothing to lose, right? Yeah. And my mom, she's a bit more conservative. She's like, I know you'll be successful, but like, maybe just wait a while. Like, and I'm actually very risk averse in all other parts of my life. Very, very risk averse. I'm actually very much more like my mom. So, I kind of was like, oh, should I just do it? But where I am in life and where I was with just business, and also like, I was also ready to find a new role. Even if I wasn't a business owner, I knew it would be kind of I was just almost at 3 years, and how my generation is. We're like, all right, what's happening?
We need what's next. What new can I conquer? Can I learn? How far can I go? Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the fact that you're risk averse. I think that I'm speaking for the other ladies, I probably think everybody that is in the book is risk averse as well, but that also speaks to the mindset that you need to be an entrepreneur, that we're so committed to this transformation in public health and coming up with these innovative solutions and serving on our own terms, that we are pushing past the discomfort of the uncertainty of business to do what we love and serve how we want to do anyway. It is not easy to do. So if you're listening or if you're watching this, it is not easy to do. And you can be completely type A, perfectionist, super analytical, and still do this work, because I am a reformed perfectionist, type A, super analytical person that now is just like, I make decisions on the fly every day, right? And you just get better and you just learn how to do it. So I love that you said that. And thank you, fiance. And thank you, daddy, for sparking and encouraging her to take the leap of faith. So, okay. So what do you want people to think of when they hear the name of your business? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind with Chilombo Consulting?
Yeah. So, I always think back to some of our values, right? Around inclusion, collaboration, equity. And so, data is one of those things where you first think all right, we need some data. I'm in a business program and I met this woman, quick side note, and she was saying, they may need my support with some data training because there's a fear around data in the communities that she's working with. And, it's scary. And sometimes people just come in with a software. All right, we need these indicators, we need to crunch these numbers. And so when people hear Chilombo Consulting, I want them to be all right, this is going to be a collaborative but streamlined process where we can really feel comfortable working with data or using data or understanding it, and not just, you might have the most beautiful visual, but if you don't know how to use it to really improve, make the impact that you're trying to make, that's sometimes a bottleneck. We get so the process is important in a lot of ways, but getting so focused on the process that we forget to think about the actions. And so I want people to really think that Chilombo's there to help kind of alleviate the stress that comes in this. We can communicate and facilitate and really explain what's happening, but we're listening to you and have your considerations in mind, because we know that sometimes a lot of the data requirements out there are crazy and inequitable and don't make sense. And so really thinking how we can best, also be advocates and work with you. So really just having you think, oh, Chilombo Consulting, okay, I'm going to be less stressed or concerned about whatever challenges I have with these analyses or with presenting this data or telling this story, because they're here to support us or guide us as needed. So
I love that.
Really I guess the legacy that I want to bring in, because I've worked in many different data environments in different contexts where it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming, but it also can be very much, a lot that is communicated in a way that makes it easier for others
to understand. I know I need all the help I can get when it comes to data. I always say I was really good at math till they put those letters in there. And then, it's very, very difficult for me to understand sometimes. So having people like you is a godsend. I actually want to read a quote from the book as we're talking about the work you've done and the different organizations where you've served as a data consultant, because I don't think people realize the multidimensional skill set that you need to possess as a consultant, as a CEO, as the person, the principal in your business. And so you said, as a data consultant, my work isn't just sitting behind my computer crunching numbers. A huge portion of my time is spent facilitating discussions with clients to make decisions regarding different elements of their data processes, whether it's survey design, metric selection for monitoring and evaluation, or dashboard development. I know you do a lot of facilitating and a lot of training. And I think that when people think data and a data analyst or a data consultant, they see someone that is just sitting behind a desk, crunching away, putting spreadsheets together. And that's not necessarily the case. Talk about what you do that people would maybe think that you do, and how they need to be prepared to do that. Because there's a lot of hats that you wear when you are the entrepreneur of your business. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think going back to just, the communication piece for consulting, you're not, for anything that you do, but it's not data focused. You can't just take the work, do it, and have no communication with your client or the community you're working with or whoever about what you're doing. Right. And so I think a lot of times, I'm gonna say on the surface, but it's kind of like, okay, well, here's the data, just go do with it what you want. And I think with this like changing data culture of more storytelling, understanding it, users need to just be informed. It's like, we're working with you. So there are times where, like right now, before this call, I'm working on an analysis, right? But to even get here, right, we've had discussions. We helped them design the survey. We're going to have another discussion next week to go over the preliminary analysis before me and another consultant write up the results, So really just a lot of discussions. And I I like to say I'm a retired career coach. So even when I like talk about like, advising on this, it's like, you're not just, out here crunching the numbers. You have to be able to explain like with your
and the value that you bring to the table as a number cruncher, right?
Exactly. And you need to be able to explain the analysis as like, I say, hey, they're interviewing you about your experience conducting an analysis, which I've done with consultants who I work with. If you can't explain how you go about an analysis, then you're going to have a trouble in consulting because, you also have to help them
have to explain your approach and your methodology.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. And so they need to be able to see like, okay, this is what you're doing, because they're not going to be reading the code that you write, right? But you need to be able to communicate that. And so I think like having those skills to be able to communicate, facilitate different discussions. I'm actually really excited because last week of March, me and one of my consultants, Brittany, who's my lead qualitative consultant, we have this will be my first work client travel trip where we've been supporting this client on a year-long project, but they now have a summit. And so we'll be presenting 2 different presentations around data processes and M&E. And so really it has been a great experience to be able to build off of like an existing project they're doing to develop these presentations. Really, and they're going to be, of course, interactive and all of that, so we can engage in different ways. So I think like the data I did a lot of career development presentations, and I still do, but I did a lot of career development presentations and facilitation experiences when I first started. And now I've actually realized there's opportunities and need for more of like the trainings and the workshops, because that also lends to like the sustainability of them incorporating data processes, where it's not just us doing the work, but even if we're helping with a certain component, maybe you're also being trained on like the use or how to eventually like bring this skill into your team and get the foundational knowledge or the advanced knowledge, depending on like what the training or workshop is. So I think being able to, and facilitation is an area that I'm learning a lot about still, and things of that nature. But being able to really talk to your clients, teach, advise, but also like in a mutually beneficial way is like very, very important in consulting.
I heard so many things there, and I know we talk about a lot in the book, but I heard you definitely gotta have facilitation, instructional skills, leadership, buy-in, communication, so many things. So it's so much more than just the data analytics part of it. All right, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions before we finish our interview. When you think about all that you've accomplished to date, what are you most proud of?
I was kind of reflecting on this recently. So I shared something else in the book. I'm not going to share what I shared in the book.
Okay. But I was going to say, don't give them a spoiler.
I'm not going to give you a spoiler, but I think honestly, being able to build a team. I don't have full-time employees, I'm still working with contractors. But this trip that I took, this vacation I keep on alluding to, was the first time where I left, but 3 major things still were able to get done. And I feel like that is just a huge accomplishment because I don't have full-time staff, right?
It's a huge accomplishment. And you've only been in business 7 months. Let me tell you, that is a huge accomplishment, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. And so just being able to, and like, I won't go as much into my business structure, but I do have 3 internal consultants. So if you go on the website, those are the 3 individuals that you'll see: an operations assistant, a lead statistician, so more quant, and a lead qualitative, more of our evaluation qualitative lead. And so, they're the people that I'm liaising with on a day-to-day basis about opportunities we should pursue. They're on basically, if projects can't be handled internally, we have external contractors that we also work with. But a lot of the business development and the client work is done with the internal team. And so, the business development piece, that was a piece that I was like, there's things that still need to go on. Of course, client work that they're ready to tack to, but business development that I used to kind of always just take on. But, having support there was a proposal that we needed to submit that week. There was 2 contractors that I wanted to onboard. And then I'm also doing an in-person business program where if you miss a session, you don't get the benefits. And one of my consultants lives also like 15 minutes from the place. She was able to go in place of me to the session. And so just like being able to have the support and just beyond like their availability, but like the team environment we've been able to build, even though everyone has other commitments and a lot going on, has been, I think, the greatest accomplishment because, I think I knew I didn't want to do this alone. So being able to know that I have the support and whether opportunities are small or big, I have a team that can collaborate with me on both pursuing and implementing opportunities has been
I love that.
super helpful to the growth. Yeah.
You cannot understate that. And I think any entrepreneur that's listening knows and has that kind of exhale. They're exhaling with you. I remember last year, I hired my first full-time in February of last year. She came on as a 1099 January and then transitioned in February. And I went on a cruise, just like you did, just a few days ago. And I went on a cruise in the summertime. So she had been with us from February, full-time from February to June. And I didn't check my email and I didn't worry about it. And I remember telling my husband, like, oh, this, like, the feeling is so indescribable because when you first start the business, it's just you.
It's you.
You are everything. And to have and to put into place, and it takes you a while to find good people. So the fact that you found good people so soon that you can pour into and they can pour into you and you can lean on and they help to build out the business. Like you said, going after business and implement, that is nothing to be looked at lightly. So you should definitely be proud of that accomplishment.
Yeah, staffing, that's a whole other thing. I've been extremely fortunate. My operations assistant was actually one of my former interns for my career business. And she was super proactive, just really helped like grow the business.
Takes initiative.
And so when I was looking for an operations assistant, and she was available again, I was like, all right. And, for all my other roles, I've had a more formal process to vet. I've had not great experiences with, really just.
We could probably do a whole nother show about that.
But the team that I have, internally is just really great, communicative, responsive, and I've been able to just implement certain things, even with limited availability, so that we feel everyone is engaged and has a say in the work, but also being able to communicate if they don't have capacity or if they need more time or whatever, just because having a good work environment I was like, I want to be what I expected in organizations. And if my company can't provide that, then what am I doing?
That's entrepreneurship. It is, I am creating what I want.
Exactly.
And what I hear you saying, and I love it because this is what's so important for me. For me, I hear you saying I'm becoming, or I am the kind of leader that I love. The kind of leader that I wanted to flourish. I know for me, I always share one of my greatest accomplishments is that not only have I been able to bring on people, but I've been able to bring on people and pay them above average. A lot of people want that. That's not an accomplishment for them. That's an accomplishment for me that I can take care of people financially in a way that I never imagined I'd be able to do that before. So I love it. I get it. I'm proud of. I think that Chilombo Consulting is going to do some amazing things because you've had such a great start this year, and that's why I'm so glad that you're in the book as one of our featured co-authors. And if you've not read her chapter, then shame on you. You should go read it.
Yes, go read it.
Tell the listeners and viewers how they can work with you. How can businesses work with you, and where can they find you?
Yes, of course. So my website, chilomboconsulting.com. We have a contact form there. You can reach out directly. or email us directly at hello@chilomboconsulting.com. And also connect with me on LinkedIn. Huge on LinkedIn, love to engage there, share, follow up with people. So you can find me at Vanessa Da Costa, MPH on LinkedIn.
Love it. Love it. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing in this exclusive interview. And I look forward to connecting with you very soon, Vanessa.
Sounds good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.